What's the
Yeah.
story with the new? Are we opening the Straits of Hormuz, or are they're planning
No,
on it? What's the
I
most
mean,
recent update?
it not surprisingly, any sort of deal seems still far off. And as we've said all along, I think Iran's strategy is to stall, 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 buy time, and not in any way give in on their nuclear ambitions. And so, what they said is, "Oh yeah, we'll open the Strait of Hormuz if you end the blockade," but yeah, and then later, we'll talk about all this nuclear stuff down the road, which is, I think, a non-starter for the Trump administration. And like we've said all along, they're going to go fighting tooth and nail before they give up their nuclear ambition. And I think part of the main part of their strategy is to stall, 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 hoping that at some point the Trump administration gets political pushback, whether it's domestically from the opposing party or internationally from other countries, if they try to go back to a more aggressive posture in trying to back Iran down. And who knows, at one point or twice, I guess now, Trump's threatened to blow up all their power plants and bridges and such, and backed off at the 11th hour. But we're still in this sort of no man's land where they're not anywhere close to reaching a deal, and then in that Iran's not offering up what the Trump administration wants, which number one on the list is giving up their nuclear ambition. So I think we're continuing to sort of tread water here, literally. Strait of Hormuz, I think the U.S. maintains the blockade to put economic pressure on Iran, which seems to be working. And in the meantime, Iran's going to push back by trying to blockade any movement of ships or that aren't, of their inkling from going to the Strait of Hormuz. And so as a result, oil's up again this morning, up slightly. WTI, I think, is $96 a barrel. And I think that we sort of hang in here in this $90 to $100 per barrel range. In the meantime, that could continue to creep higher over time if this blockade and shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz for all effective purposes remains in place. So for the oil names, we're sticking with them here.
All right. So CNQ should put up a monster quarter and give us a special dividend. Is that right?
I don't think we're going to get a special dividend out of them this quarter, but this week, what we're looking forward to is Chevron and Exxon toward the end of the week. Chevron on Friday. Chevron's one of our core holdings. We also own Exxon. But I think overall on earnings, you're going to see, on average, beats, just given I don't think the market has fully incorporated the higher oil prices that were experienced in the first quarter. So I think EQT was sort of a little bit of an exception, and they were a very strong beat. But I expect on average moderate beats by the sector as we go through earnings here. Yeah, so it's what we've talked about, and a lot of people have talked about the long-term fundamentals with the demand that's going to come in from AI power generation in these data centers. LNG exports, as more LNG export capacity comes online starting later this year in the U.S., which right now has got to fill a big gap from what's been taken offline from Qatar and the Middle East. So the fundamentals is really starting, particularly, I think, in the second half of this year. The demand for natural gas is very strong. And I don't know what the premiums would be. I haven't looked at it to see how out of the money you'd have to write the calls to fund puts. But anyway,
well, I looked last week. I looked at the $6 calls, and they weren't so bad. I want to say they were 50 cents, and you're at 5.85. So let's.
It's not much.
I mean, it sounds like a lot, but on a stock like this, it's really not.
It's such a low stock.
Let's see. Yeah, so it's 30 cents. So for the May ones, and that's a day out. So the decay is gigantic on something like that because you're May 1. So maybe you want to go out another, week or two. So May 15th. May 15th, still 37 cents for the $6. That's not bad at all. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll augment my. But what were you saying, Charlie? You were muted when you said something. So
no, I was just curious. I mean, I know we're all sector specialists, but you might have views on the market. But do you believe in this rally, or does it not matter to you?
So we weren't on it all together before, but a couple of weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I said that I put more money into the market, and so I guess that's saying I believe it. I'll also, I just don't believe that I'm very good or anyone's very good at timing the market. I don't know where else people are going to go. So so am I a believer? I don't know, Bob. What about you? I just think we can't.
I'm still sitting on a larger than normal percentage of cash. Just sort of watching here. I mean, the market's still very bifurcated. Obviously, energy's done very well. Healthcare has been okay, but in some industrials have done well. But otherwise, consumer discretionary has been horrible. Tech's done really well, and that's largely what's been carrying the market higher here. But like you said, where would I go with excess cash right now? I don't know. I mean, I'm not buying healthcare. I'm not buying consumer discretionary. Maybe there might be something to do in industrials. I don't know.
How about you, Charlie? Are you just all in?
No, I'm heavily underinvested. I'm 30-40% cash, depending which portfolio you're talking about. But so, listen, from my perspective, economically, the economy's fine as long as this, CapEx spending boom by the hyperscalers continues. And the consumer is going to continue to spend as long as equities remain elevated because of the positive wealth effect. But if you lose one or two of those things, I think we're in a recession. And, I'm worried about, a recession by the end of the year because I'm having a hard time with the equity valuations and the likely negative impact it could have on the wealth effect. Now, what would cause equities to correct and stay down? Something obviously in the Middle East that creates higher oil prices would be the first thing that comes to mind.
By the way, just so that we help our viewers here, when I talk about cash, I include in cash treasuries. Some people don't. They consider that fixed income. They consider it bonds. How do you consider it when you're talking about you're sitting on cash? Do you literally mean like, yeah, it's a money market fund. I'm getting whatever 2.5%, 3% or whatever number that is now, or do you consider like treasuries as cash?
I would not if it's in excess of 2 years. I mean, I own TUA. TUA is the 2-year treasury, but no, I don't own any significant positions in long bonds, and I would not consider that cash.
I mean, yeah, I don't. I'm like Charlie. I don't consider long bonds cash, but I'm not considering this. I've got treasuries laddered out over the next year every month, but I'm not considering that cash.
So that's what I consider. By the way, that's what I consider cash, just because, they're short term and I can sell them in a minute. And I mean, maybe not a minute because I'm not that fast, but I can sell them right away and they're cash. But okay, just so I'm even less in cash then. So then you get that impression.
I point out too, at the same time that I'm above average in my cash position, I'm also a little bit above average in hedging, in writing covered calls on some of the more volatile names that are up a lot. So, as far as hedging my position, I'm a little bit more hedged in that regard than I normally am too. So, we'll see here. A little nervous about significant upside, but I'm not worried about a market crash either. But when I have an opportunity, like I've said before, to sell vol on something that makes sense that's up, then I'm doing that too. Probably a little bit more than normal.
Hi, I'm David Maris. If you like what you just heard, we've tracked every single pick we make on the show, every ticker, every thesis, every entry price, over 1,100 picks and counting. We put it together in a free report with our top 10 performers, the reasoning behind each one, and a preview of our full dashboard. If you want access, the link is in the description.